In this video, I'll give you the top 4 players to sell in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'm Jim Coventry of RotoWire. Let's start with number 4, DeAndre Swift, Chicago Bears, age 26. Look, the last 2 years, Swift has been effective for fantasy football. He's been a compiler. Played with a great Eagles team 2 years ago in 2023, 1,049 yards, playing behind an elite line, 4.6 yards per carry. That was really poor behind that line. And then he goes to Chicago in 2024, 253 carries, heavy volume, but only 3.8 yards per carry. Obviously, the offensive line in Chicago was much worse than that line in Philly. But the point is still this. You're compiling up some numbers, which is fine. But Swift last year, 32nd percentile broken tackle rate, 38th percentile yards after contact. Now, it is entirely possible the Bears don't add any running back competition and Swift remains in a job. But even if you're selling a dynasty, you might be looking 2 years down the road. Maybe the perceived value for this year in Swift is exceptional for people that are interested in your deal because Ben Johnson comes over to coach the Bears. And you remember in free agency, what did the Bears do? Left guard, Joe Thuney, excellent player. Center, Drew Dahlman, plays very well blocking out of those zone concepts that Ben Johnson likes. They ran similar zone concepts in Atlanta. Drew Dahlman was very good. Right guard, you bring in Jonah Jackson. Now, I know he was a little disappointing with the Rams last year, but Jonah Jackson has a history playing with Ben Johnson. And the Bears have 2 tackles they drafted, Braxton Jones on the left and Darnell Wright with the 10th pick, I believe last year, on the right. So this could be a very good line. So you're thinking, well, maybe Ben Johnson crafts this great running game. But here's the thing. Ben Johnson's a smart man. And in Detroit, he had an elite line. The Bears love a good line. I don't think it'll be elite. It won't be that Detroit line. But they had David Montgomery and they had Jahmyr Gibbs. They had incredible level of running back talent. So they were able to run the ball super successfully. In Chicago, I fully expect Ben Johnson will see his talent. And he'll say, okay, I got Caleb Williams. I've got DJ Moore. I've got Rome Odunze. We're going to be a pass-first team. Swift will get his. But again, I do believe if not this year in the draft, Swift will eventually get replaced. It'd be that next year. So you're selling him in Dynasty now because if he plays, he compiles, and that's fine. But it's not going to be this great season because Ben Johnson there and DeAndre Swift figures things out. He could have done that in Philly. He was a compiler there. That's what you're getting. That's why you're selling him. All right, let's go. Number 3, Courtland Sutton, Denver Broncos, age 29. It's going fast for him. Now, last year, look, he had 1,081 yards, 8 touchdowns, 81 receptions. That was the first time since 2019 he went over 829 yards. And we saw the hot streak for Sutton between weeks 9 and 13, at least 70 yards in every one of those games. 3 of those games, 97 or more yards. But after the week 14 bye, things changed. All right, so Sutton averages 46 yards in the last 3 games. But you're like, okay, so what? Everybody goes through ups and downs, right? Well, what was happening? All of a sudden, Sean Payton came true to his word. He had been talking since early 2023. I'm getting Marvin Mims involved. I'm going to get that young man involved. Now, it wasn't a ton of targets, but Marvin Mims became a big part of the offense. Bubble screens, occasional deep shots. They actually had somebody they could use as a secondary option. Because, look, at the time, little Jordan Humphrey, not exactly getting it done. Devon Vele, nice player, but whatever. Courtland Sutton was the guy. Now there's a number 2. And I believe Marvin Mims continues to see that role grow. And in free agency, they bring in Evan Ingram. Now, Evan Ingram's 31, and maybe he's seen his best days. But again, you're going from Adam Troutman to Evan Ingram. Sean Payton wants to run the ball. That defense, they brought in high-impact players in free agency. A couple players from the 49ers, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. So this could be an elite defensive team. Because remember, they were building something last year. And I know their rushing attack does not look good right now, but they want to run the ball. They'll put extra bodies out there to do that. They'll probably address that in the draft. And if they're going to run, if their defense is going to play well, if Sutton's going to share targets with Mims, maybe Ingram, that 18 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, it's going to be kind of tough to match that. Because remember, Sutton only had 14 touchdowns in the prior 5 seasons before that 2-year outburst. So I think that's the whole point. I think right now you sell Sutton. 29 also, he's starting to get up there in age, so he doesn't have that much longer to go. But realistically, his situation is not going to be anywhere close to as favorable as it was in 2024. Hey, if you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. All right, you can also check out fantasy football content, fantasy baseball, all the sports, all of our rankings, free 2-day trial at RotoWire. You don't need a credit card. Just go to rotowire.com/Jim. Check out our content. If you like it, join the team. If not, we're happy you took a look to see what we're all about. But again, that's rotowire.com/Jim. Number 2, we are going to talk about selling James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Look, Cook had an enormous fantasy season last year. He had less yardage in 2024 than his breakout in 23. His workload did fall by 30 rushing attempts, but he scored 18 combined touchdowns in 2024. So James Cook came out as the fantasy superstar, diminished workload, like I said. And remember, in 2023, Cook had 1,567 scrimmage yards, only dropped 30 rushing attempts and 12 receptions. He went down 300 yards last year. He went to 1,267 scrimmage yards. So those touchdowns masked quite a bit for us. Now, he was still great at breaking tackles, 75th percentile. Broken tackle was good. I should say after contact, 70, but the broken tackle rate, not as good, 56. It's okay, but he's not the superstar back. And I still think, here's the thing. He's not a back who you want to carry the mail for 17 weeks. And the Bills believe the same thing. Through week 10, we saw at least 54% of the snaps 7 times, right? And then all of a sudden, from week 11 on, Cook's playing between 36 to 46% of the snaps. They're easing his workload. Now, Cook said he wants more money, and Cook said that he wants more snaps. But the team knows this is not a back you want to grind out there all day long. The Bills selected Ray Davis last year, and Davis didn't have a big workload. Ty Johnson saw more work. But we still saw Cook's snaps go from 610 to 463. They had a plan. They're probably keeping with that plan. This is a great time to sell James Cook, coming off an amazing season. But my guess is his workload is only going to go down from there. And now our dynasty sell number 1, who's one of my favorite players in the NFL, A.J. Brown, 28 years old, Philadelphia Eagles. Look, Brown is an elite superstar. I've said it before. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, a couple of years ago, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. I said they were all the best receiver in the game, just in their own different ways, right? And if they all were used and had 180 targets, but used in their own way, they all would be like equally dominant. They were all that good of players, right? Well, the problem in Philadelphia is not A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown represents one of the biggest disconnects between NFL football and fantasy football. Last year, we saw the Eagles do what they had to do to win a Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley, great offensive line. Jalen Hurts, some issues as a quarterback. We are running the football. And as long as Saquon Barkley remains in Philadelphia, this team is likely going to continue down that path of being a run-heavy team. And that's the biggest problem. A.J. Brown averaging 7.5 targets last year. Now, look, Kellen Moore, who was last year's offensive coordinator, in theory, should have been good for A.J. Brown. But we get 67 catches, 1,079 yards, 7 touchdowns. That was 13 games. He did miss 4 games. And that yardage would have been higher. Of course, catches would have been a little higher. But he was not putting up the monsters. The floor was good. He was a good floor play. But then the yards per target went up. And that was a Kellen Moore thing. Went from 9.7 to 11.4. So, so that's fine. So that said, A.J. Brown is not going to see the target share he deserves. And that's going to be a problem. And in Dynasty, people kind of realize this is about Saquon Barkley. But I think if you put Brown out there on the sell block, I think he has an opportunity to catch a higher return than you'd think, because some people are going to see the 4 missed games and they're going to extrapolate some numbers and they're going to say, you know what? He's still playing at the peak of his powers. Again, I don't know if that 7.5 targets per game is going up. And that's why we're selling one of my favorite players in the NFL, A.J. Brown.